Because what is the moral of the story? Something had to be done to create an impression that I've lost touch with reality so that I don't get to be identified as a reliable witness to go, because I'm the only person that could have sent those people to prison, whoever is alleged to have committed problems. Because, I have all the information. All the information of shenanigans that happened in Mpumalanga. Money is claimed even before the stadium was built. So, attempts to cash out cash. So I have all the evidence that is needed. Already, I was called when results were about to be announced, which is one of the reasons why I started talking to the people that were pushing that I should be the chairperson of Mpumalanga. And I said, guys, I'm not here to die. I get an anonymous call. Say, we know. We could see even the numbers are in your favor. But just like it happened with others, you must know. Should you accept in any win, you must know you're going to Witbank wrapped in a in the ANC flag or government flag, whatever. So people can be prepared to kill at all costs. That's what it is. Not what I believe in. People talk about state capture. The problem doesn't begin with the state. The capture begins in the ANC, because at any point in time that is unable to deal with criminals within its own ranks, it tells you that those that are at levels where they have the authority to exercise that authority are also compromised. I first took a decision when I went to Mbombela, my first press conference, that I'm not going to take a salary. I'll direct it to worthy causes, and we're respecting those that benefited, particularly learners that performed very well, that needed some money to register at universities. Around the same time that I went asking for a beef up, because there were all indications that I must not come out of. There were actually attempts which I can't talk about, even physical. That made me leave Tegwane, and I had to find a safe house. Dr. Shabalala was busy mixing it's lead poisoning, my brother. It's lead poisoning. You must go read about what lead does when it's in the body. Stays, it doesn't move. Save. And he was mixing it. I can say it. He can come open. And I swear to him, are you aware you're a qualified doctor? I'm not your patient. You can't impose that I should go to 1 mil or whatever. He says, no, it's a message. It's an order from the one above. And they spoke again with Pegitele. They spoke again. And still, clearly the instruction was no, continue. The next thing, I found myself in 1 mil. I wasn't aware where I am. Totally disorientated. I'm told I was unconscious for 3 days. And when I counted back, because I asked one of the army guys, what's happening? Where am I? He says 1 mil. I said, what? He says, no, we're cutting you. If 2010 FIFA did not take place in Mbombela, we already gathered information that Morocco was already going with big bags to find a reason to punch hole into South Africa's host status, meaning the possibilities that South Africa would have been withdrawn.
So Mbombela was really fixing Mbombela was key.
It was key.
South Africa to get the World Cup.
That's why even Madiba said, hey, you have to go. And I said, they told me in 2006, I said, but I'm going to die there.
Interesting enough, Matthew Sposa mentions his relationship with former President Thabo Mbeki. And now this brings me to the question that you didn't want to go to Parliament in Cape Town. You struggled to stay there the 1 year that you stayed there. Was it because it was imposed on you? Why you didn't want, or it's just that you had other interests?
The background to that decision was a meeting between President Thabo Mbeki and Ndaweni Mahlangu, who was the chairperson and premier of the province, and Siposezo Masango, who was the acting secretary, who took over from the late Soli Masego. And in that meeting, clearly I was a subject of discussions, and they were sent to come tell us that we have to leave. The following Thursday, or I can't remember what day it was, to Cape Town. No consultation, no engagement, no session. If you sit with those that may have been complainants about what we don't know, because we don't know what they complained about. But all I heard was that it was said that Ndaweni Mahlangu can't run the province freely and comfortably in my presence in Mpumalanga. And And of course, as I said, what seemed to have been something that could have been about one individual coming and the other going up, apparently had to take 6 that got exchanged. And ironically, all those that were redeployed to the province were placed in responsibilities that elevated them from being backbenchers nationally, and we were sent to Siberia, to go rot there. And I was not prepared to legitimize that decision. Neither was I prepared to actually take it passively. And I'd taken a decision, no, it's time to leave. If what we do is not appreciated and it is felt we are an obstacle and a problem, I did exactly what Matiba advised. That, remove yourself. If you find a space to be toxic, hostile, and they're not, aligned with your spiritual comfort, just leave, then allow those that don't think that you have to be there to have space and get to do things as they wish. So that's when I couldn't wait for that year, because they gave me an advice. Those wise men who said, no, don't defy the president. Go stay. And as I said, they made me meet with the Treasurer General of the ANC, individually, by the way. Both of them advised that, no, don't leave. Okay. Don't just do that. It doesn't happen in the ANC. So be a disciplined cadre, go serve for a year. And I did that.
Okay. Then after that, you moved straight into...
I went to the private sector and built an amazing, powerful outfit. I mean, when they intervened and asked us to go to Mbombela, we had non-government related opportunities that were purely private sector driven. I've never done tenders. I have. I hate tenders with a passion, because I saw them turn individuals that were innocent into monsters and turn people against their own people, and worse, actually subject our people to substandard products because people just chase after profit and money. If there's anything that is worse than capitalism, the brutality of the tender system is worse than capitalism. I hate it with a passion.
I can imagine.
I never participated in it, and I know what destruction it has caused to the ANC. Its culture, how it has eroded its soul and actually led it to be hijacked.
I get you. I get you. So, briefly, if you can tell us, for those who don't know, the business ventures that you got yourself involved with, and maybe the major ones, where are they now? Which ones, where are they now?
Very interesting. When I came, because of exposure, obviously, to the public service and the broad environment of changing lives and living conditions of the people, the first entry point was to link up with and interact with build environment professionals for purposes of initiating interventions that sought to change the apartheid spatial development landscape. Part of what we did was to help come up with what we call inner city regeneration interventions. I immediately plugged into the training and development space, where we established a relationship with Zota Manase and Associated, which was a firm, one of the most successful black women-owned firms of a chartered accountant that had been given an opportunity to intervene in turning around municipalities, especially in stabilizing their financial management, auditing, and all of those. So we plugged into that to play our role in helping, roll out those. I think we did about 42 municipalities interventions. As I said, I didn't tender. I was not part of those, but there were interventions that some were funded, through grants and what have you, to turn around municipal, to turn the tide to the municipal environment. Then we were also associated with behind the scenes and indirectly contributing to the first city ever to be established in the country, which is Cosmo City. Private sector driven, but of course government was mobilized to become a partner.
Yes.
We were associated with a lobby, and I will not get into details on how that happened, that identified the possibility of mobilization of infrastructure funding through DBSA and other institutions for Waterfall City in Midrand. It is something that I have a background on where it happened and how it happened, and I won't get into details. I was one of the 3 people that presented the first concept to where we presented a case around the need for us to explore subway systems.
Wow.
And that resulted into the Gautrain project, but a brainchild behind it, because I can't take credit, who really did a lot of work before inviting us, to plug into where he had limitations. For the role that we had to play was TJ Lupepe. I respect that young man. He's a doctor by profession, but a very successful entrepreneur, investor, financier of projects. He's really the brainchild behind Gautrain. But, as you'd know, in Africa, very little gets known by people who are at the center of initiatives. Only those that hijack and end up presenting themselves, as the initiators of the idea. He, by the way, is the one that proposed and brought Mr. Mzolisi Tiliza, who was the CEO of the Chamber of Mines. After he's put together a compelling, powerful case that also indicated how this strategic partners that represented the PEE component will be put together, which is now called Strategic Partnership Group, and the whole, integrated infrastructure development model, but that brought, rail, what I can call railroad, the speed train concept, and the rapid rail development. Yes, I wanted that word. So that's what we did. We also played a role in the international advisory and consulting services. We currently serve more as a bridge builder between Asian-based potential investors and funders of projects, especially what we call major catalytic projects, especially in the built environment. That's really more or less what we do. We still work a lot with Asian-based companies, especially Chinese. But we want to primarily also plug in more into the space of facilitating people-to-people exchanges. Because, leaders come and go, especially in the political space where a life cycle is normally linked to the 5-year periodic electoral cycle. So leaders come and go. When you have relationships that are located in the context of your bilateral relations, that identify not only agreements governments come into, but projects that are likely to be pursued that are of benefit to the country. It's always important to look at where people benefit and mobilize the sections of the community that are beneficiaries. Part of what we're looking at, aggressively pursuing, and we've already started bringing delegations coming from abroad, plugging them into relevant areas where they meet with their counterparts. For instance, university-to-university relationships, research and development to research and development partnerships, think tank to think tank, innovation, institutes, so that you really have that space of ideas, occupied by the relevant people that are driven by a deep sense of urge to be associated with a legacy, as scholars in particular. That they can always be,
Very, very, very interesting. But, how do you now, you are a politician, you came from exile, you served in government, then you decide to go into business. That change, how does it come about? Because the first thing you will do is fight for positions. Be there. Even today, you would still be fighting for public office, as most politicians are doing. How easy was it for you just to say, no, let me move?
What is different for some of us is that at no stage did we ever see ourselves as those that are in the struggle for personal benefit, in the struggle to eventually see that space as a potential career development space. We responded to a calling. Actually, for some of us, even our involvement and consideration of getting involved in the struggle was spiritually inspired more than it was about anything else. And that's why it becomes easier. You know, for instance, when I went to Mbombela, after really seeing the intensity to which the rogue elements that flooded ANC ranks, that distorted what the ANC stands for, that put across a message that now these are politics that are about money and the stomach. I first took a decision when I went to Mbombela, my first press conference, that I'm not going to take a salary. I'll direct it to worthy causes. And I mean, we're respecting those that benefited, but it will learners that performed very well, that needed some money to register at universities for them to be able to get bursaries from there. We're buying uniforms, school shoes, and, you know, there's been that thing of channeling the little that we had, not necessarily because we had. No, because the little that we generated and the little that we realized from creating very strong, sustainable company. When I went to Mbombela, for instance, we're doing training and development through ISET-SETA. That gave us a significant number of learners that we're training. And by the way, it is said that we are the only company then, it's possible that even now, that trained that 500 number. It might actually even be more, of all learners that we ensured that all of them were placed into job opportunities. You know, after training, so that we don't just run a mill. I mean, that was a huge, you know, opportunity. And around the time I was asked to go to Mbombela, we just secured, and I was one of the founder shareholders and you know, initiators of the Gauteng project, which is you know, it was over 26 billion and it ran to 33 billion. You know, meaning at that point, I had a chance to say, no, I'm not going. I want to be a multi-billionaire. For God's sake, people that I was with, that I was putting together the management team that was going to occupy what we call Linbro building in Sandton, not far from Marlborough. I was actually one of the two, including the CEO of SPG, who became the chairperson, and very central core that coordinated. So I was at that level, you know, of exposure that would have made me decide, no, I'm following money. But I said, no, I'm following serving our people. I will leave that space, follow our people. I would be very comfortable multi-billionaire. I mean, my assessment of what one could have made from the if state would be not less than 4 billion.
It wouldn't be. But obviously, because you said it once and then nobody followed up, you went to Mbombela, you said you are not taking your salary, you used it for whatsoever good causes.
It caused a lot of problems and tensions with my family because it reminded me of people that were poor. And I said, those that are family members, I said, those poor people that I don't know are the ones that propelled us to the high responsibilities that we found ourselves in. It's people that we don't know, and therefore the basis on who should really. And I mean, what can you do with a salary?
And then you went there to serve. You served like a true comrade that you are, and then for some reason, then that turns against you.
Of course,
your whole life.
How I changed.
You were poisoned.
Completely changed.
You feared for your life.
Changed.
We were trying to fight corruption and there was resistance. I mean, what do you think should have happened in Mbombela for things to be right?
No, continuation of the intervention. We came up with something that was, it's still regarded as a very dynamic intervention, which was Saka Mbombela Terror Strategy, that broadly dealt with stabilization of the governance, ensuring the fortification of government institutions that would, when we came to Mbombela, all the wolves, the hyenas and vultures knew that the institution was now fortified. There was a strong Chinese wall built, no external force of power, irrespective of what position they had, whether deputy chair or chairperson or premier or anything nationally knew that Mbombela is a no-go zone for any wrongdoing. And basically that's what you do because, things that are wrong thrive when there's chaos.
Yeah.
So you first deal with chaos.
Yeah.
You stabilize the institution by ensuring that it strictly adhere to all, governance, dictates that created that institution to play a particular role. But we also came up with what we call rapid response intervention that was based on our assessment of what we identify as pressure points and the reasons why there was a discontent and most uprisings. Because when we went to Mbombela, there were a lot of, sporadic protests from communities. So we started then, I asked Pilane to come on board from Kokta to then lead a team that ran with a concept that we called rapid response, which eventually, by the way, because it worked successfully in Mpumalanga, we told Titi Mabuza went up with it when he became the deputy president and suggested that. But that was our concept, of a rapid response. That would then look at delivery of interim interventions, for instance, dealing with water, which was one of the most sensitive things, and basically going back to all commitments and ideas that came from IDPs, and we basically redirected, spending. And of course, one thing that we did when there was any wrongdoing at some point, there was something that was said to be wrong that was done by someone that was among those that came and approached me to stand as a chairperson. I did not say no, but Matola was a part of those that came. Rashid Matola, part of those that came and persuaded me to stand.
So you had no interest?
I fired him on the spot, literally suspended and subjected him to disciplinary hearing. So without favoritism, we were still friends. We were the best of comrades because he knew it was not hatred. It was just that wrongdoing is wrongdoing. And, wanted to deal with it ruthlessly without compromise. And so that's basically what we became. And that's the only way that Mbombela was stabilized. Because if we're, pardon me for my French, pussyfooting and soft and wearing, kids' love to deal with a serious problem like paralyzing of an institution that is redirected to the pockets and stomach of individuals instead of the people. So that's basically what made us very unpopular.
Yeah, for sure. But now take us through, because your security, you had to beef up your security. You were poisoned at that time.
Yeah.
Take us through what happened, and you stayed on.
I stayed on.
Despite all those threats.
But after delivering the reports, and as I said to the Mdlunkulu, something comes to attention again, because there was a thorough security assessment, risk assessment done by Richard Mdluli that justified the reason for us to have security. We approached the Deputy President then. It was the Secretary General, Comrade Khalima, and asked him to intervene first. And at some point, I may have lost the sequence. As a deputy president now to Zuba, we also asked for intervention. We approached and he coordinated a session. I remember it was at Irene with the Safety and Security Minister, Nati, and actually indicated that there has to be intervention. Interestingly, around the same time that I went asking for a beef up, because there were all indications that I must not come out of. There were actually attempts which I can't talk about, even physical. That made me leave Tegwane, and I had to find a safe house. So that, because Tegwane was a risk. It was on the street and, there were not houses on both sides, only one side. It needed to be so obvious and easy to be attacked, and easy get away to Mozambique. So I decided to go to Rich Hill, which was opposite Tramrock, which was more safer. And that is that. And when I followed up with Nati to beef up my security, told me I'm not permitted to allow it. Interestingly, around the same time, the mayor of Port Elizabeth then, who was serving at that time, had police bodyguards arranged, security beef up. And Mam Makwaza, who was the NFP leader, also got security around the same time. And one never knew why the differentiation that I shouldn't. Then, having picked up that there is that, that thing that I must not come out of Mpumalanga alive. I was only left, it was in March, only left with a month to go. In May, actually, a month and a half.
Yeah.
I then forced and imposed a meeting with the president. I went to Mahlamandlovu. Mxolisi Dladla arranged a meeting. He was the head of the VIP protection for me to meet with the president the following day.
President was Zuma at that time.
That I'll leave to you to conclude. So, and a meeting was arranged that I should go to Mahlamandlovu. Interestingly, that evening I arranged with General. He was a police commissioner of Gauteng, who was a former general in Mpumalanga, head of police in Mpumalanga, from Kuhluman. I don't know why the name just escapes my attention, but I'll remember the name.
Yeah.
I also asked a former intelligence operative who was head of intelligence in the province and indicated to him that I'm going to have a meeting with Jacob Zuma. Okay, with the president to ensure that security is enforced around me. And I was transported by the police, literally escorted until delivery. And on the way, I changed going to Mahlamandlovu. I went to Oliver Tambo and said, no, I want to meet the president there. I can't go to Mahlamandlovu. Unfortunately, on that day, the deputy president was leaving for the US. After a while, suddenly I was told, no, I can't leave. 1 mil, Dr. Shabalala, who was the head of 1 mil, came in, and the late Jackson Tembu came in and said, there's a request by the president who was still working at Lutuli in the communications department, and said, there's a request that you must go to 1 mil and be admitted, and the president will meet you after. I said, no. I just met the president for 4 hours. I gave him what I had to give him. I don't understand the rationale of going to 1 million. For all I care, I'm not aware of any medical background associated with the president that will make him do a diagnosis that will determine that I should go to 1 million. That's not where I'm going. Mm-hmm. Then we had, serious argument with Mtembu until I said to him, and may his soul rest in peace, about Mtembu, you know me, where we come from, and you know what happened in Mpumalanga. You're basically coming to say, I must bargain for that thing that you say I must go, because I must just be direct, and it's so painful that he's not there to respond for himself. But I rounded everyone. I don't think he was aware what happened, because after I got frustrated, and he said, no, but the president says you have a meeting with you after 1 mil. He called Nati, spoke to Nati, and Nati said, Lassy, that's an instruction from now on. Go to 1 mil, be admitted. I went to Shabalala. Then Tembu was like saying, Lassy Pela, if you don't, I'll have no choice. I'll have to leave you here. I said, but you can't leave me here. Why leave me here? You can't tell your people to allow me to go, because I don't understand. I came here to meet the president to talk about my security, beefing up my security.
Then you are sent to a military
So
hospital.
what do I want there? And I said to him, let me be honest to you. You may not be aware. The major challenge and problem that there is, that even the idea of 1 mil is coming now, is memory. What is a serious problem is the memory, and all that which I've said. I don't, and I said to Mtembu, I don't own what I've written about what happened in Bobela. I don't own the shenanigans and the recommendations. I did my task. I executed. I handed in the report. It's up to the ANC to decide what to do. I'm not going to fight anyone to implement. In fact, I have no interest of pursuing any political ambitions or serving in any political structure. I've taken a decision. I'm going back to the private sector. So I want no president or anyone or any promise about what is going to happen, because we're saying, no, things have been discussed that have to do with what you're going to do and you'll not regret. It's a bright future. I said, I don't bargain over corpses. You know very well Jim Shala tight in Mpumalanga.
Yeah.
So if I am one of those that tight, who would you be talking to? And I said, no, I'm not saying you're at the center, but I'm just saying I would prefer that you leave out. And he said, Lassy, there's nothing I can do. He said, Dr. Shabalala, I'm leaving everything in your hands. And he left. Dr. Shabalala was busy mixing it's lead poisoning, my brother. It's lead poisoning. You must go read about what lead does. When it's in the body, stays, it doesn't move. Save it. And he was mixing it. I can say it, he can come open. And I swear to him, are you aware you're a qualified doctor? I'm not your patient. You can't impose that I should go to 1 mil or whatever. He says, no, it's a message. It's an order from the one above. And they spoke again with Begitele. They spoke again. And still, clearly the instruction was no, continue. The next thing, I found myself in 1 mil. I wasn't aware where I am. Totally disorientated. I'm told I was unconscious for 3 days. And when I counted back, because I asked one of the army guys, what's happening? Where am I? He says, 1 mil. I said, what? He says, no, we're cutting you. I said, why? He says, no, there's 3 heavy contingent of separate security placed to cut you not to escape. And I said, what 3? He says, it is us from the army. It is high-tech security. It is private. It is police. I said, what forces? I don't know. Then I can't obviously get. It's so interesting because no matter. But I mean, we have to reveal. I don't know how they can, but I don't think that they have the authority to be able to hunt that young man. I said to him, I'll ask you for a big favor. Here's a number. I think he asked for a pen. I wrote a number of Rhoda. Rhoda was responsible for a number of things in my private office, as in business. Before I left from Bombela, he's one person that was in charge of finances and what have you. I said, call her to put 500 into your account. Into your phone, buy a time or 500 to your account. When you get that 500, just buy a time. I just needed a time to be able to phone the office. And that's when I spoke to Busi. And I said, Busi, please look for Caesar's number. He says, no, Caesar called. Meaning yourself, Caesar called. And there's stories here, Mayor, are you still alive? There's stories that you're gone, you run mad, you're running the streets of Pinare naked. And
that was the story that you were mad. You were nowhere to be found.
No, nowhere to be found. And you turned that story of the 2nd of April, 2011, by virtue of the fact that you spoke to me, and obviously I had to protect the movement and say, I checked myself in. I didn't check myself in there. No, I was totally disorientated, dark, like pitch black. I couldn't believe in when I look at myself in the mirror. I don't know what happened there. I don't know. It's really by God's miracle.
In there.
It's by God's miracle, I think, that I survived. Then, obviously, we then picked up the diagnosis when we were in China, because I was hit again at a city called Jinan. I was hit in China.
Okay.
It was in September. That's where, in September. And let me be very open and honest.
Let's not rush too much. Let's start it from the China matter from the beginning.
No, it's fine.
Then after Bombela, you were immediately deployed
after
Shanghai,
Bombela, I was approached through the president then that sent Comrade Dana Pule. I'll be very open and honest. That said, I've been sent by the president to ask you to consider going to Shanghai or New York as a consul general. It was on a Tuesday. We met at a garage. He says, please think about it. By Thursday, the president will make a decision. I said, no, let me sleep over the matter. Interestingly, very interestingly, and we need to bring this context. The reason why I had to be out was, on one hand, the problem that I'm sitting with something that is explosive that no one trusts where it would end, because ultimately it will be known and I will fight. But the second was, if Lassy is at Mangaung with a powerful delegation that comes from Mpumalanga and his national profile and appeal and his lobby, because it's lobby. No, we never won. We never missed the battle. I'll tell you how we put we put together Cyril Ramaphosa's machinery for 2017. Most people don't know how deeply involved I was. A commitment I made even before I left the public service in 2016, where I said, I'm leaving. I'm briefing as a deputy president that I'm leaving. I have my health issues that I have to attend to. And there was an idea to say, no, stay, man, stay. I said, I'll be dead by then if I stay. Let me prioritize my health, but I commit. I'm going to be part of putting together a machinery that will contest in the next elections. And indeed, I became part of those that indirectly and directly generated comfort on him, because he's really not a very strong human being emotionally, psychologically, when it comes to conflict. He's one person who doesn't really want tensions, conflict. And so there to be, among people that had to play that role, in the informal interactions was Comrade Thandi Modise, Dipuo Letsatsi, just to assure him that you have a backup of comrades that will set up a national machinery, to ensure that propelled. Whether or not I believe that there would be anything different, it's immaterial. For me, honestly, I was among those that just decided it was not a matter of settling a score, but that Zuma had to go. And that's, for me, that was just it. It doesn't matter whether we went and fetched something in the mountains and, shave it and hide anything that would expose it as a non-human. For me, for as long as something was done to really deal with that cycle that was taking the country and the movement down. But anyway, so that's how it came about that. And Mangaung meant political activism and participation had to be taken away from me, because among the first things that was said was you completely pull out of anything that is to do with political activities when you undergo training. Interestingly, I trained well for diplomacy.
Yes.
A lot of my colleagues were sent. I was kept there with no answer.
Oh, okay.
With no reason.
You were training at the same time.
We trained and everyone else was deployed. But I was just caged. And what was not known is that I used that period, because 6 months training, I used a 6-month period. And by God's grace, when the ambassador of China, then in 2011 came, I also just got appointed as a CG designate. For some reason, a message came, because, remember, our involvement in the ANC and influencing ANC policy decisions actually, interestingly, placed us as a youth league at the center of lobbying for the dropping of Taiwan in favor of the One China policy as far back as 1996. But that was only approved in 1998 and central. Central. And it's so interesting that when I went to Shanghai, this get revealed even by a senior party leadership and the mayor of Shanghai that I sit with. In a history that shocked me, that these people would know so much about my early political life, including the role we played as a youth league that persuaded the ANC leadership, which there was no comfort in dropping Taiwan, I must say. There was a lot of lobbying behind the scenes that saw Comrade Chris Dlamini becomes the first ambassador to be deployed in China in 1998. But they bring that out to say, we are aware who you are, what you have done, the contribution, the role you guys have played in placing.
But when you were given a choice to go to New York or to Shanghai,
no.
Was it your choice that you wanted to go to Shanghai?
In my case, I think I indicated even to Comrade Dana, I was joking with her. I said, but there's an Obama in the US. What room is there in space for me to shine? So that fellow is taking the whole limelight. I'll go in because what I did, of course, as a student of history, I was quite exposed to many different revolutions, especially of developing countries, China included, the 1949 October 1st revolution, Chairman Mao's Red Book and all. So I was fascinated by that history, point that then when we were invited, and it was not even supposed to, by God's grace, I get invited to the official opening, and I'm one of the VIPs of Bank of China in Sandton. And it's the first official meeting, duty. So the task on assignment that the ambassador then of China was executing. And we met there and informally says, hey, look, man, if there's anything I can assist, because how Chinese picked it up, I don't know. And how they actually even got to extend an invitation. I can't even remember how it came to me because they were not even supposed to interact with me before I get an agreement. Officially appointed when I'm in China. So that then opened space for me where he said, look, feel free. Here's my political office. Here's my economic. Feel free to engage on the amount of information I amassed on Chinese history, heritage, culture, the 5 elements. So I went there being authoritative on the Chinese history, evolution, and so many things about it, to a point that I think I'm one of the few heads of missions that actually, first meeting with the staff, I presented what we call Sakainingsim in Shanghai. It was a general strategy of a mission, which I can share, at some point, that basically contextualize our participation and presence in China. That located it in the fact that we are not just there for South Africa's interest, but we are there pursuing SADC regional interest, but we located the mandate into the broad mandate of the AU Agenda 2063. It has not actually taken a firm shape then, because it's before Mamankosa Zuma really took it to that level. But we took the AU as a very important mandating platform, especially around the promotion of the African Union vision, but also the interregional integration, to a point that our mission then came up with a strategy of ensuring that when we are there, we become a voice not just of South Africa, but also of the region. That I also suggest that Comrade Temitambo was there and Comrade Peggy Langa were there, that we basically collapse and create a flat structure that ensures that we work together as a South Africa's mission in China and delineate, demarcate responsibilities that take advantage of every dimension of each geographic area. Hong Kong, which was an international financial center. Shanghai, which is an economic powerhouse that brought together 7 eastern coastal provinces that generated then, when I went to China, $5.8 trillion into the Chinese economy, which was more than 50% of the economy around that time was around $11.8 trillion. And what I did was to plug into what I identified as key strategic sectors that influence or drove the economy of those eastern coastal provinces. But what was most fascinating was exposure to Deng Xiaoping that came up with what is called opening up and reform. And one after the other, a lot of what we could have tapped in as South Africa, as a region, as a continent, could have actually facilitated an amazing turnaround of South Africa and Africa's economy. But what we also, when we were there, were excited about was the forum that was created of consul generals from Africa. And of course, all consuls general, but primarily the Africa one was more important for me, for us to have a coordinated effort of really building a very strong, what I could call, mission of Africa in China, Shanghai. That because when you talk about Chinese, what people don't understand is that if I can take Guangdong, for instance, which is a province of the 7 eastern coastal provinces, then it generated $1.3 trillion into the Chinese economy. That's the whole country's economy. So what I then did was to also, into that model, introduce the idea of facilitating twinning arrangements with sister cities in Shanghai. In Joburg we married. But we also facilitated a partnership that brought Durban as well. Okay. And we also took Durban to Guangdong, where we were thinking that they could tap into the coastal, let's call it marine economy, if you like, on how the coastal provinces were strategically positioned to become global players in the global space environment, where conditions were created through the opening up and reform of Deng Xiaoping that attracted the best of the best and the biggest companies that even closed shop from their own traditional base, because of the incentives created, guarantees that were spread over a period of 30 years. 1978 to 1998. That ensured that there can be that comfort generated, but drastically also reduce the cost of labor, and what I appreciated, which we wanted to bring as well into our experience of bringing our premiers, and was the imposition Deng Xiaoping and the Chinese Communist Party brought to anyone that came as investors into the Chinese economy, for them to all open their bank accounts and trap the flow of money so that there's no income leakages that went out of the borders. And that's basically what systematically created the liquidity in a sense that, they generated economic development and the benefits, were very critical in uplifting the living conditions. That's why China is the only country in the whole human history that migrated over 800 million people, in a period of only 30 years from rural areas to urban metropoles that still keep their rural settings, but they're exposed to the most advanced, sophisticated, society where all of this systematically. But anyway, I'm just saying that we went there already, highly pitched and highly inspired. But the rotten politics of our country where people play a man, I became a victim even when I was abroad. And that's when in September, after again another attack. Interestingly, it is my networks that are built with Chinese that also facilitated my admission at hospital. It has nothing to do with South Africa. Chinese took me to the best hospitals and the best medical treatment intervention. That's where the discovery of lead poisoning, came to my realization and the concoction of interventions that should keep me alive.
Oh, okay. So they took you to hospital.
The best treatment I've ever received in my entire life.
After you went there as a consul general?
Yes. Okay. Hardly, I wasn't there for long. But you try to do all these things and, push and this. And when I said to my ex-wife, I'm not coming to die in China. We are leaving. It was on our own violation. Anyone can come anywhere from anyone and talk stories about what. I was never withdrawn from China. I came here on my own volition.
Okay.
I went.
Because again, the allegations came up way back before you went to military.
Yeah. It was a rehashing of the story that
they say, hey, we've gone mad.
Hey, I'm running naked. But these are the stories
then
that
in China spread. Again, they said,
spread the same story. You know what Chinese said when we met? They said, when of course I was already in the country now. Those in the embassies, back home, there's a big question mark. Why are you guys fighting? I said, why? Say, why is it that such a big story is blown out of proportion? We have cameras in China in every corner. There is no story picked up. There is nothing picked up by intelligence that there ever was this thing that we see, spread throughout international media. When ratings were done about that story, they said I came second after Nelson Mandela's popularity. They said there's never been such a flood. Famous. They said there's never been such a flood of a story that was driven by that guy called Clayton Monyela. No, the leakage came from there. And Thabo Thage, that eventually got sent to Shanghai. And there was a certain Dr. Suklal involved. Jerry Machila was very much at the center. He was a DG. And clearly there was a strong political, because Polokwane had already gone. So there's no threat. And, before I even went, one of the people that I was in China with China says, hey, you know what, I fear for your life. Says what? He says, no, I picked up something, but please don't reveal. As I came here and I deployed, he said, no, this one is not going to last. It's just for now, and after some time I'm going to withdraw him. This is what I hear. Then I come to the office after my hospitalization. I hear someone came from Turkey, took pictures of the office, the distance of the table where I sit in the chair, the door, outside, and it's on the 27th floor, for God's sake. And, it drove me to paranoia because I looked at the window. It's on the, I said, what if there's a plant? Then I started having paranoia. And remember, it happens when, again, around that month, the arrest of those that were responsible for, or that were alleged to be responsible for Mbombela shenanigans. Those. It happens around that. And I then said to my ex-wife, you know what? We are leaving. And we left. We left. Thabo Thage is the one that we spoke to and said, hey, I can't.
But when I checked around that time when I spoke to you,
let me also indicate the story comes in March.
Yes.
But I left there in October. I left with my wife in October. And when we came, to the surprise of many, I checked myself in now. Now I check myself at 1 mil. And I stayed there The file is there, actually, interestingly.
Mm.
And when I was released, I went back to the department.
Mm.
And
To Deco.
So I was there. I think in the process we negotiated. I even asked my lawyers to represent me for a position there. So I was appointed as the head of, I was part of the Asia and Middle East.
Yeah.
Which was part of an arrangement of what I can call a settlement of working back here. In March, when I've already been home from October, a story is created and breaks out. And it is said this thing happened 3 months ago. You know, China at the end of October is winter.
Yeah.
November is -6. If at any point in time 3 months ago, which would have been in December, I walked in China naked, they would have found a black statue frozen by Chinese weather, which I would not have survived in my health condition. I was here.
Because that's what I was going to ask, that when I spoke to you around that time, it was winter, in the middle of winter in China. I was going to ask that question.
It was.
Yeah.
There's no way. If March you can go. That story came out in March, I think, in the Sunday World. If you go back and they say this thing happened 3 months ago, but I'd left in October. So it's 6 months back home, not setting a foot in China. They say 3 months ago it happened. No, it was a concocted story. Because what is the moral of the story? Something had to be done to create an impression that I've lost touch with reality so that I don't get to be identified as a reliable witness to go, because I'm the only person that could have sent those people to prison, whoever is alleged to have committed problems. Because, I mean, I have all the information. All the information of shenanigans that happened in Mpumalanga. Money is claimed even before the stadium was built. So, attempts to cash out cash. So I have all the evidence that is needed.
So exactly being followed around, being redeployed outside the country and everything, just because you know too much about Mbombela,
I don't keep quiet,
the corruption,
and
2010 stadium.
I'm a problem because what was not expected was giving a report that really, if anyone was serious, there could have been people arrested, and that could have led to an easy conviction because I've provided evidence. It's not just what I've penned, it's 8 boxes that would have enabled anyone to link.
8 boxes of information.
Of course.
And up to today, Jimmy
no one
was killed in 2009.
Yeah, no one will want anything to do with Lassy and Mbombela. Not in the ANC.
And no one has been arrested since 2009 when Jimmy Mhlanga was killed.
You know that better.
Yo. But please, and I need to really qualify, there should never ever be any blame on the ANC. There's nothing wrong with the ANC. The same as there's nothing wrong with the masses. What becomes wrong are those individuals that are rogue elements that when they're exposed to opportunity, they think more about themselves and their careers. If people are ready, I mean, I was called when results were about to be announced, which is one of the reasons why I started talking to the people that were pushing that I should be the chairperson of Mpumalanga. And I said, guys, I'm not here to die. I get an anonymous call, say we know, we could see, even the numbers are in your favor. But just like it happened with others, you must know. Should you accept in any win, you must know you're going to Witbank wrapped in a cop, in the ANC flag or government flag, whatever. So people can be prepared to kill at all costs. That's what it is. Not what I believe in. I didn't have to be a leader at all costs. That's why I said to them, no. Guys, Banigan, have I touched? Buy a phone. Let me focus on Mbombela. And they were saying, no, but I mean, with all, especially those few that I took through and took into confidence. I said, no, let's fight. Let's challenge. I said, no, guys, you have no idea. Even if you challenge, the results that will be counted are fake results. The real results have been exchanged. There's money that is exchanged hands. Even those that came to count were carefully selected. Brought to be independent, no, they're part of the scheme. The message was, Lassy must never become chairperson of Mpumalanga. They didn't want to deal with that energy. I get you. Been tough, eh? I can imagine.
I don't know what I did that made one such a problem. And I'm just an ordinary, youngster who grew up born in a village, raised in a township. Nothing extraordinary. But the energy mobilized to stop me from rising. And I had no intention of rising to anywhere. It's just serving. No, exactly. I've never even declared I want to be president or want to be chairperson. Or you get approached. Say, hey man, we think you can really play a role.
Well, one thing,
and this is supposed to be a democratic organization that leads the democratization of society, because there are 5 very important tenets that define the ideological ethos, if you like. It's democratic. It speaks to that. Non-racial, non-sexist, But the movement is also against the geographic chauvinism, so that in that, the building of a country that's democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous is built on a foundation of an organization that sees to call itself the South African Native Congress, but saw itself as a broad church that embraced Pan-Africanism. That's why the concept African National Congress came about, meaning there has to be an elimination of anything that will reduce the ANC for what it is. It is not. But and I always believe, and many leaders always said, that the ANC as a leader of society and striving to create a democratic society must be an embryo that will determine the nature or kind of society that it will build. And if all of those things that demolish what it stands for, its pillars, that makes its culture eroded, and its soul, be captured. It would not be the ANC of our forebears. It will be there to serve the interest of those that believe they use it as a vehicle for self-benefit. And that's why rogue and questionable elements ended up occupying the high office.
Yeah, exactly. I want to take you back a step that we jumped. I think it was perhaps before the prevalence of the rogue elements that you're talking about. 1994, first government is constituted. Matthew Posa is the president.
The premier.
It's the premier.
In chairperson of the province.
Of the province. Then he forms the government. I think, I'm not sure whether you were appointed in the very first cabinet, or there was a reshuffle.
It is the first cabinet of Matthew Posa. The major thing that really caused hostility, and I pity him because he found himself now targeted, because it looks like he had to justify why he appointed me when I was in National Parliament. He appointed me when Nationalist Party withdrew from the Cabinet of National Unity, then replaced Nel of Agriculture left, then he created the Department of Sports, Recreation and from that day on, he never had rest.
Yeah, at that time,
he never had rest.
Yeah, at that time you were what? You were 29 years, turning 30?
Yes, I was 29 years, yes. I was 29.
One of the youngest MECs to...
But I was already a member of parliament then, yes, I was
we youngest member of parliament, then you came back to be the youngest MEC.
It was myself and Thabo Makwea. Yeah, Thabo is a few months or a year older than I am. He was in Northern Cape, yes.
Exactly.
We're the youngest,
And we became...
And I moved to finance then.
Yes, and you became
to do some cleanup there.
Yeah, you've been
cleanup.
You've been the youngest of everything.
And what did you do there? When we landed in finance, major 11 billion rand SARS debt, we cleaned it off.
Yeah, because I want to talk about that cabinet that Matthew Posa led at that time. There seemed to be it had big dreams, it had big visions.
Oh no, this amazing.
Maputo Development Corridor.
We created
that was one of them.
Exactly, Maputo Development Corridor. That basically, when he landed, the premier then, Comrade Matthew Posa, decided was, and interestingly, we were part of the same leadership. These concepts were and ideas are things that he canvassed in the PEC and PwC. So we were quite on board in really directing the province. So we said he's going to create what Gauteng currently called a city regional kind of established authority. City region simply says you are a province, but look at interprovincial linkages, but also link with neighboring countries that are part of SADC that can actually be part of you have a broad perspective of tackling that is a regional economy. And that's why the first thing that is important, because if there's anything that is critical for any economic development and growth, is obviously the built environment, and very, very important backbone of any growth and development of any economy is transport, freight and logistics. And what he had to immediately think of, which was brilliant, because that then completely redirected traffic to Maputo, because among the things that had to be done was the dredging of the Maputo harbour, so it's a deep harbour that can be able to handle, the big vessels that brought goods and exported wherever. That's why you saw a diversion of traffic that normally went to Richards Bay and some via Free State and to the Eastern Cape. Going, the number of trucks you see even now are endless. Going to Mozambique. So that was it. Not necessarily that we think that it was the only thing that was important. I mean, but it shifted and created more of what I can call the regional economy. But it also led to the improvement of the N4. That road infrastructure, but it stimulated a lot of development along that belt, the N412, apart from the road linkages. And the idea, by the way, was that it had to stretch right up to Kimberley. That was the idea. But you can see Jengel Shongololo, the impact that it made. But there was also the Secunda, Maputo Secunda gas pipeline.
Oh yes, and that's another big one.
Then through his leadership, part of what he also did was the most important process of integration, because we had 5 Bantustans, which included some part of what used to be Buputatswana, Kazankulu, Leboa, then we had Gangwan and Gwandebele, and of course the 6th were the Regional Services Council and the Transvaal Provincial Administration. How he skillfully brought all of the energies and converged them to create a single administration is one thing that was mind-blowing. And it really created a very solid administration. Yes, there are inherent challenges that, as I said earlier, may not have been something that he paid attention to, because, in any space where your preoccupation is that of leading politically, you cannot be in the political and administrative space. So clearly there are things that inherently built that may have been the result of wanting to bring that smooth transition that may have led to a continuation of a culture that was associated with the past, that made Mpumalanga be seen as a most corrupt province with all. But you see, what people fail to understand is that at any point in time that there were all I know is that people were dealt with, man. People were fired.
No, I remember.
There's about 3 or 4 MECs that were fired.
I remember that time.
Starting from Mabuza with the education stuff. And, I took over from Jacques because of the dolphin challenges. When I was moved, I think, the Mabona, the license matter that involved the former speaker, Balega. Better. So the fact that there was action when these things came, I think is something that must also be acknowledged. And unfortunately, that's also what intensified this tension and conflict that led to people concluding that he has to go just after his accident. But I'm not necessarily saying that human beings don't have mistakes, and we're all infallible.
But did you enjoy that time? Did you see progress?
No. Let me put it this way, and that may sound controversial. What Matthew Posa and that leadership collective did in 5 years and attained is something I can't find any compelling case that convinces me that all ANC-led provinces in the entire period that they were in charge of provinces have done. I can't. The first new city development ever in the womb of democratic South Africa took form, shape, content, and character in Riverside. You go there, it's a new city altogether. Because in his wisdom, as I said, he decided to appoint Vian. The Judge Vian was in charge of the Vian Commission that established, investigated the possibility of legalization of trade unions after the 1973 Durban labor's, strike. And he approached him to then investigate how possible it would be to create a legal framework that will enable Mpumalanga to move as the first one to legalize, to take advantage of the legalization of gaming. And that's how strategically, Secunda and Nelspruit and Witbank were identified as the first beneficiaries of that initiative he came up with. And that's basically what led to Graceland and the mall development, the Witbank Highveld mall development, and Nelspruit. The explosion was primarily 3 other additions to it. The idea of locating the provincial legislature and government, but also locating the mall there. And then the third was obviously the license. So that then created an integrated kind of development that made that area explode to become the city that it was. And what he did in the process was also to ensure Mpumalanga immediately plugs into international best practice models. Relationships were created province to province ourselves. In Canada, we had Alberta. In Poland, we also had a partnership. In Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia. Australia, we had about 6 partnerships. South Australia, Victoria, and I think Melbourne. So we brought international expertise, experience through the partnership, but also the mobilization of grant funding that came from your GTZ, and mobilization of the best, some actually consultants that came from, the big firms, that came. I think, he really had some natural talent of leadership that you want to put together.
Exactly. I think he mentions in his book that the enthusiasm that he created these bilateral agreements actually brought him some heat from the national government because they believe it was their responsibility. He was,
at some stage,
encroaching in
the first province also, to come up with a coat of arms. And we're told we are becoming a federal government. But I mean, you need identity. What if you position your brand, if you build a profile, that strategically position you outside the border, even nationally, you need a face. It can't just be, an amorphous, shapeless jellyfish type of, phenomenon. So even there, they said, no, you're becoming federal. We went national. No, you can't create this relationship. It's international relations, international responsibility. So, if you can't allow thinking out of the box, I don't think that would have managed a lot of things that we've done, even Ombombela and all of these other things that we did in the provincial government. So there's a lot. And I mean, we'll be busy with, actually, we've worked quite extensively on something that is also about sharing our experience. There's a lot that will come out.
It is then a paradox that around that time, then Mpumalanga gets the nickname Mambaralanga.
Yeah.
Because things were happening, but
of course, focus has always been on those things that
are negative.
Yes, that had to do with wrongdoing. But for all I care, all I can remember is that any case that emerged was dealt with. And I can assure you, if you trace it, that's exactly what Matthew Posa was hated for. That he acted decisively in dealing with any acts without... In fact, it's also interesting because all the time he had to act. He calls at MEC and says, look, imagine yourself in my position that you're dealing with this matter. How would you handle it? Please go think about it and come back and tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And most came and said, no. I'm tendering a resignation.
Ish. Yeah, those were the times. I was still a young journalist back then, but I remember these issues like they happened yesterday. And as you say, at that time, the way corruption was being dealt with, it was not being swept under the carpet. No. Everything was open. Okay, it has happened. The investigation will happen. Yeah. It was transparent.
And there were consequences.
And everything was reported that, look, now these are the consequences that we're taking.
We were made to buy BMWs that we have not participated in their purchasing.
Yeah.
There was a story, he comes, he calls us.
The BMW story.
He comes and says, guys, I'm told you about cars. Who bought them? Jacques was the MEC. He says, no, I don't want trouble. Guys, you all have salaries. You have bank accounts. Speak to your bank managers. Take over those cars and make them yours and pay them from your pockets. And he left us. And he left us with a debt of, a BMW I've not spent. I already had my VR6.
And you didn't want the BMW.
I didn't want the BMW. I already had my VR6, which I was happy with, and the salary could not carry that extra burden. So we were made to buy them. So nothing was off.
Just because they were bought without following processes.
Yeah, it was off the government, fiscus were to foot the bill. And of course there was a big scandal and story of members of the legislature giving themselves loan from the legislature.
Hey.
So then when you act, you attract enmity and hostility. How on earth would you leave banks that are institutions created, take advantage of authority and power and go take yourself interest-free loans?
Yeah, those are the times.
Yeah.
Those are the times, but I think you were seeing money for the first time, I guess, and you were thinking, hey, that money never ends.
Yeah.
It's there, it's government money, it never ends.
We were in charge of billions. If I'm not mistaken, it must have been over 100 billion or something like that.
Yeah.
Not even a cent went missing. When we had to put together a tender board, we ensured it is of such a caliber that the members appointed there are those that you cannot even call and ask to send a coat and tie on their gate. Yeah. Abu Mama Sibego, I remember. Tom Nkosi was part of that, Thomas Nkosi.
Yeah.
We put a formidable team of people of integrity. What they did immediately, in fact, interestingly, when Ndaweni Mahlangu took over, we know where the meeting took place, and among those people are the very ones at a later stage that got associated with the Mbombela problems. Your Hebet ladies were part of deciding on how to demolish a tender board that Lassy set up that is Oslambis. That's why even when they had a big meeting of businessmen, they said, if you want to know what remember ukuthi unidlise njani ngamapipe uma MEC we finance. So it's always been about money.
It's always been about money.
Yes, and opportunities from government, cash cow.
Yeah.
Not about who can serve the ANC and our people best.
So I just don't believe your story as such for some reason, because people in the political space, especially somebody with your credentials, they fight for positions in government, for public office. They fight up until their death.
I refuse to fight.
Up until their death. And at your age, you are fairly young. You should have been, fighting, having ambitions to be president. And
I refuse to fight because I was not there for a position. And I think for my own sanity, I had to walk away. By the way, it was my own decision. I could have just contested, fight. No. At a point that I realized I can no longer have a voice that has space, but also be accepted, and worse, when it became intoxicated, impurified, hostile, and flooded with rogue elements that even at the level of contestation in 2007, that choices had to be made. And 2008 in the province, it was based on who can bring the numbers, who can buy the votes, not who can best lead. Then I decided I'll no longer raise my hand.
Yeah.
I'll step back, and I did. And I never looked back, by the way. Never looked back.
So now today you're sitting here. What's happening with you?
No.
We know you as a politician, but really, what are you busy with?
I decided to retreat and retire to a space where I gave myself 3 years. The only time I came out of that break of really retreating into a sanctuary in a church, in a farm environment where I developed an amazing relationship with and love for animals. Because one thing I discovered was actually nature's extension of its own ways and order can best be traced and is still sustained as it is in the order of how animals behave. They never change. They're conditioned to be what they are. A human being can be a frog, behave like a frog today, a snake tomorrow, sheep, goat, mosquito. Human being is sophisticated, can just change and become anything.
They are fickle.
Can we confirm the creature? And that's when I started, let me go stay in the farm. And suddenly the space became big. I said, let me start with goats. I ended up owning about 6,000 goats and sheep because I was then one of the regular auctioneers. And then, focus more on buying the frail kind of goats and sheep. And I had a network with vets.
Yeah.
Veterinary surgeons and also employed one from an animal shop that constantly checked on them on a weekly basis. I just enjoyed being there. The only thing that made me decide, let me go set up office in Melrose Arc and get a penthouse was working on the 2017 campaign to help, as I said, deal with that situation.
Oh,
but otherwise, I've been there then.
So you are a farmer. It's safe to say that.
There is that dimension. But then in the process, it came to realization that both sides of the family, where my biological mother got married to Bagan Chabeleng.
Yes.
But the one that is directly linked with my family is my late grandmother on the paternal side. She's also from a royal family.
Oh.
Bagamalachi.
Okay.
The mother was actually one of the princesses. Then it comes to also realization that in the evolution of the petty empire, in any instance that you find empires anywhere in the world, even in the country, there are two very powerful individuals sometimes collapse into one that the head of the kingdom will surround themselves with.
Yes, yes.
What in our case we'll call Isanusi.
Yes.
Someone that is really more aware of the behavior of the skies and be able to pick up energies of things that are not visible.
Yes.
And sometimes you'll also find spiritual lawyer.
Yes, yes.
When the so-called Western civilization brought missions that got interpreted into a high priest or umfundisi.
Yes.
And interestingly, in Zulu, umfundisi, the one who passes on information about what is inherited from the past. But then there would also be the one that will be more familiar with the behavior of animals vis-a-vis their relationship with the environment, with plants, where medicinal plants, animals that can be consumed and what have you. So there's that history that links the Mama Ilas from my grandmother's side with being the really like Isanusi Senkosi.
Yes, yes.
Historically, and Bugumuntu Kipa Ingoma.
Oh, yes.
Then that thing got revealed in my spiritual journey. There is that history of Ubungoma, if I may put it that way. That then it kept on coming. Even my late mother passed away. On her dying bed, I said to her, "Hey, there's this thing that you are picking up." I says, "No, I'll never do that because historically we've never gone for initiation." Usangoma, so she never did that. And that pack hit were to respond to a calling. So I underwent that. Okay. It was a very interesting journey of discovery.
True.
Very interesting journey of discovery. But as a person that is able to negotiate, I think I negotiated my way not to really become a healer, but be in a space where I plug more in the space of ideas.
Matter of accepting it.
Exactly.
But then requesting from the ancestors to participate, contribute differently.
Contribute differently, exactly.
Yeah. So having spent your whole life in the ANC, I mean, you barely had a childhood. It was taken by the ANC. Michael Jackson's childhood was taken by music. Yours was taken by the ANC, by the struggle, activism, and so on.
ANC-led struggle.
Yeah.
And I mean, an organization is still very proud of.
Yeah.
And still proud members of.
Yeah. I often wonder, for a person like you, how do you feel about the situation now that the ANC is losing power? Now we've got the government of national unity. It means now the people are looking at the ANC with a different eye. as somebody who has been there, done this and done that for the organization, how do you feel about the current situation?
It's painful to have really seen the ANC lose a firm grip. It had very strong hold on power. In the past elections, we never had to wonder how the ANC will perform. We always thought more of the margin, the landslide margin, not to worry about whether or not it will win or lose. So it's worrying. It's really worrying, but just bound to happen, because if there's a deviation and what I can call going off the rail, by an organization that has so much history, such an important global appeal profile, that has produced some of the best leaders that are highly respected even internationally, or Oliver Tambo and Nelson Mandela, and their struggle history that is so rich that would naturally make beneficiaries of freedom, see that as the only home. But at any point that, the distance grew between the ANC and what it stands, what is seen to be standing for and what it's doing, especially because the irony is that, unfortunately, what resulted into the ANC's destruction and demise. Because we'll say it's a demise, because, anyone must convince me if it has not. Is greed that is associated with the power, to which you ascended. And at some point that I was asked, painful as it is, what do I think is a solution to a country's problems? Yes. I said, the irony is that we cannot wish for the opposition to take over, because we know what they stand for, what they represent. But the danger, which is the most painful thing, is that what started as problems that were about tensions in the ANC, that's primarily linked to failure to manage transition of the former liberation movement that had to embrace the reality that now there's contestation for power, and therefore that which comes with the opportunities associated with that power does not affect its liberation movement, history and ethos, culture, politics. And I said, what became initially, if we can trace them, the problems of the ANC, became the problems of the government the ANC was in charge of, which translated in that becoming the problems the country had to face, and eventually the problems that the nation has to face. So logically, if we were to look at balancing act between what happens on the left-hand side and what should happen on the right-hand side, it would actually mean that what becomes a major problem is access to power. So if you solve the problem, it means you must remove that power from the hands that has actually created the problem. And that's the most unfortunate thing, that it was to a point where, and asked if there's anything that will be corrected. And I said, this thing happened and got so entrenched to a point that, as I said earlier, it can be likened to a kingdom of lions being overtaken or taken over by that of hyenas. The two cannot coexist. The ANC in its current nature, especially the membership, not the movement and all what it carries, because the ANC is a larger than life kind of, phenomenon if you look at the great leaders that led it and the legacy that they left. But it would actually, and I'm sorry, it's a very wrong example to say, it's like a woman that has just committed abortion or has had a miscarriage, and you find another man hoping to make a healthy bouncing baby out of that womb without cleansing it. It's where it is. So renewal has to be fundamentally preceded by a thoroughgoing cleansing. And cleansing is purification. To deal with the impurities that have created opportunistic agents which, like mosquitoes, took advantage of the window open and tucked themselves in a chaff posy somewhere where they waited until it's stuck and attacked the unexpected victim. Yeah. It's basically, the impurity, and that impurity is exactly what can be traced from the erosion of the ANC's, culture, its soul, and basically the capture of its soul. People talk about state capture. The problem doesn't begin with the state. The capture begins in the ANC because at any point in time that is unable to deal with criminals within its own ranks, it tells you that, those that are at levels where they have the authority to exercise that authority are also compromised.
Exactly. So bad habits have been entrenched for close to 3 decades.
Institutionalized.
So how easy will it be for the ANC to cleanse itself and become what it was before? Is it possible in our lifetime?
Look, you cannot expect those that are at the center or have just washed over destruction happening to be the ones at the center of, coming up with corrective interventions. At some point, there was a proposal, an idea that what could rescue the movement might be something similar to what happened in Morogoro, Okabwe, in a special consultative conference where, those that still have all it takes, that have integrity and, a little bit of that which inspires confidence can gather and really elevate themselves beyond the entrapment of the skin and think of the future of those not yet born that is being destroyed. When, we're on an ideal path of what I can call development trajectory, if you can really look at a lot of imposed choices and decisions that have to be taken, but we were really on a promising path post-1994. Everything just collapsed and you think you'll one day wake up and to find out that it was just a nightmare. It has not happened for real. So maybe that's the reason why even leaders such as Comrade Thabo Mbeki, former President Thabo Mbeki, are coming up with the idea of an intervention that involves renewal of membership that subjects everyone to serious scrutiny and even interrogation on whether or not people qualify to be members, as we know the ANC members to be. Okay. Perhaps that's why there are such interventions, but it's going to be a very, very difficult road and path because they normally say that you cannot expect problems to be solved by those at the center of creating those problems.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can't find solutions from, those that created the problem in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, I would like to thank you very much for your time. It's a very important interview.
Thank you so much.
And especially coinciding with the release of Matthew Sposa's book, I think most of the issues you have expanded on them. They are mentioned in that book as well.
No, thanks so much. I haven't laid my hands on it, but I look forward to reading it too.
Okay.
Thank you.